Hi, welcome to Van Life Fishing. We're going to talk today about fishing rods. I'm a co-angler, or have been, professionally. I fished quite a few tournaments. In 18 and 19, I fished a total of 15 co-angler tournaments. I got checks in a third of them. So I think I did all right for a beginner. But I learned a lot. And I want to share with you today the selection of rods that I ended up with after a full year and a half of fishing with pros, why I use them. Now, I have no affiliate relationship with any of these companies, so I can be pretty blunt and brutal about what's good and what's bad. So I'm going to start with Bass Pro Shops. Yeah, I use Bass Pro Shops rods. Carbon Light, well, I'll be perfectly honest, a good rod. They're good solid rods. Some people really, really like them. I'm underwhelmed. I think for the price, there are other rods out there that are extremely competitive with the Carbon Light rods. But I do use, I still have one for spinning that I use, as this one here, and it's a good rod, okay? I tell you what I do like in the Bass Pro Shops rods, and that's the Johnny Morris Platinum Signature rods. These might be the best blanks I've ever used. They're a micro guide, and I have a tendency, or have had a tendency, to use braid with a leader. You really can't use braid with a leader with these micro guide rods. The feet on the eyes are so small, there's really not much holding them to the rod, let's be honest. And what happens is that eventually the little knot, I don't care even if you use an FG knot, it'll still pull a little bit on them, and eventually you pull the eyes on. Now I have 4 of these I'm going to have rebuilt. Okay, 4, that's a lot, but I like the blanks so well, I'm going to pay and have them redone, and when I do, they'll actually redo all of them, and they'll put an extra little wrap or 2 ahead of the eye to help keep it from coming out. Also, I will never use these again with a leader. I have several of them, a medium, heavy, medium. This medium action rod right here, I can throw a small crankbait on 10-pound test line forever with this thing. It is just, and control it. You put it exactly where I want it. Just lay it right in there where you want it, and then bring it back out again. Now I say I don't take the rod out of my right hand. I wind left-handed, which is unusual, but that's how I do it. And so this is without a doubt of the rods that I have and I use, my favorite small crankbait rod. This is a beaut, and a rod similar to this has won me a good bit of money. Another Bass Pro Shops rod that I borrowed, one that they don't make anymore, and on Grand Lake, I caught I think probably every fish I caught in that tournament came on that rod, and all on small crankbaits, Spro, Little Johns, and things of that nature. Okay, next up is going to be Garcia rods. Now, these they're called Vendettas. The next level up, which I can't remember the name of, is white. And I like those too. I like these rods, by the way. They're inexpensive. They're really reliable. They don't break easily. They're fairly sensitive. They're just a good all-around workhorse rod. Are they the same as a $200 rod? No, they're not. Okay, but in their price range, I think they're more than competitive. I use them both in spinning rods. I also have several that I use for bait casters, particularly when I've broken an eye off one of those and I need a good medium bait caster in a 7-foot-ish range. Okay. Next up, in the Garcia, is the Ike rod. Now, I spent a lot of time and research on these before I ever bought one, and I was really impressed in the way it looked. The first one I bought was this one here. This is one of the graphite rods, 35-ton Mike Alcanelli designed power rods, they call them. And I bought it to flip with on Okeechobee. Now, it's long. It's about 8 feet long. A friend of mine who's a pro on Okeechobee, I asked him what rods I should get, what length. He said, as long as you can get. So I did. Well, it turns out he's 6'5", and so as long as you can get for him is a little different than as long as you can get for me. I probably should have settled with the 7.6, but these are 8'10", 8'11". They're long rods, but they really work well. Yeah, and they flip well. They're very sensitive. They're good, sturdy rods. They're well made, well designed. They're not overly heavy. They have good finishes on them. These have held up probably as well or better than any rods I have. I have it in the all carbon, and then I have one in the glass rods, which he calls a finesse rod. I bought these accidentally. I wasn't paying attention. I thought I was buying more power rods, and I flipped with it, and I had a fish, and I set the hook, and it's wide as it way down here. Well, it's because this is a glass rod, not a carbon rod, and but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I'm not going to use it for flipping heavy weights. I use it for swim baits, which I have another rod to do that for. I use it for heavier, well, let's say I wanted to throw a 7-inch Senko, which is like throwing an inner tube, okay? So they're great for that. Great for Carolina rigs. Great for fishing a heavy worm. They're anything where you need not a stiff rod, not a heavy rod, but you need a lot of backbone, the ability to pull that thing out of grass, that kind of stuff. These are great for that. Again, it's really hard to beat the quality, particularly in the price range. They're not as expensive as the Johnny Morris Signature Series rods, and they hold up better, but they're also not as light. They're just a completely different animal, and but these are good. Okay. Next is going to be cashin rods. Now, it's hard to say enough good things about a cashin rod. They are really, really a reliable, strong, well-made, American-made rod. As sensitive a rod as I've ever used. You can feel every little tick of anything with these. This one happens to be a spinning rod that I bought from someone who actually didn't like it. I love it, okay? And it does extremely well. They hold up well. They come in a variety of actions. I will get some more of these, particularly in a drop shot rod. They make a drop shot rod that is exactly what I want, and I will eventually get one of those. The other cashin rod that I have and use is a cashin flipping stick. And it is actually counterweighted. There's extra weight down in here so that you can flip all day with this thing, and you can. It's much easier to flip with than most rods. It is a heavy rod. It's designed for throwing those 3/4 ounce, ounce and a half, 2 ounce weights, dropping them in the pads, dropping them in the mats, working them through, jerking them out of there. It really is awesome for that. Also use it. Well, you see, I was flipping believe it or not, you can flip worms. I was flipping a worm with it last time I had it out. Great rods. Can't say enough good things about a cashin. I really like them. Okay. The last rod I'm going to cover that I have and use is the St. Croix. It's the St. Croix Mojo Bass. I bought this rod because I was looking for a rod similar to it and couldn't find what I wanted. And come to find out, this was exactly what I wanted. This rod has probably won me as much money as any rod that I have. But what do I throw on it? Swim baits. It's a fiberglass rod. People say, oh, you can't throw swim baits on a fiberglass rod. You need a big heavy graphite. No, you don't. You need a rod that has a soft enough tip to allow that fish to get that bait in there solidly, rather than slam it like you would on a carbon rod. This rod just kind of loads up with a swim bait. You're reeling that thing in, all of a sudden your rod feels like you pull it into a bunch of grass, and then it just keeps loading. And when it does, you set the hook, and it's got so much backbone. When you set that hook, almost all of them are hooked right in the top of the mouth. It fights them. This rod's caught more 5+ pound fish than any rod I have. I love it. It's absolutely awesome. It's a Mojo bass, St. Croix. It's a big rod. Okay, it's a 7/8 medium heavy power, but it's a moderate action. It's not a real fast action, even though it looks like it would be. For swim baits, bigger ones, not the little ones. For the littler ones, you need a smaller, lighter rod. But for the big easies, even for skinny dippers, if you're using like a 5/0 underspin, which I use a lot of, this is the rod. Okay, that's it for rods for today. That's just a section. I'm a co-angler. I use all these rods. Can't carry them all at one time. Okay, so but this gives you an idea of what rods I use, how I use them, and what I think of them. So y'all have a good day. Keep casting, keep cruising.